Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
Tomorrow is opening day.
This morning, didn't have a great hunt. Deer didn't move like usual.
We just got set up in the middle of this bedding thicket. Been saving this spot from the rut. It's a nice, I think it's a nice buck.
Boom! Hits a 170.
That was money. I think he's down right over there, maybe 10 yards.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy.
Baller rut.
You're listening to The Legacy, the Whitetail Legacy Podcast, coming at you, kicking it old school right off the bat. We got Tim Cates, or Tim Inferno, as I like to call him, coming on to tell his story, A Legend of the Woods, Episode 5 of Inferno. Episode 6. Man, we're deep in this. Luckily, homie's here to
We're on two hands now,
yeah,
bro.
2 hands. I can't count that high. That's why my buck scored 20 inches higher than normally. Going on, this was an awesome episode. This is one of those episodes where he reached out to us, came on, guy just tells a story, flawless, runs it through, and then we just got to hit the tactics at the end. Glad we made the connection with this guy. This guy's got a mid-190s, a mid-170s, a mid-180s, a bunch of 140s. I mean, this is one of those guys that we created this podcast for, who's shooting giants, unknown, who's got it figured out, and we got to spend an hour on him with the phone and kind of pick his brain, and we learned some stuff that we're going to try, learned some stuff that we just talked like an hour and a half about kind of game planning off what he said on this episode. So
Straight up cold message on Instagram.
Yeah.
Straight up cold message.
yeah, so shout out to him. We hope that we know that there's more guys out there that are just straight gangsters that are unknown.
Right.
So he said he listens to a lot of podcasts, enjoys ours. This is his first podcast, did an awesome job.
Rocked it.
So let's get into the partners and get into the show. We'll start out with the VIP Veteran Broadhead. A lot of exciting news coming out of the Veteran Broadhead. A lot of people partnering with the Veteran Broadhead this year. Really getting out there. If you guys haven't tried the Broadhead out yet, before you make your purchases this year, try it out, man. You're going to be like, wow. It's cool. We've been talking about it so long.
Mm-hmm.
Like before it was really, really known. And now people are like, okay, there's something here. Like they see it, they look at all the reviews and they try it. They're like, okay, wow. Yeah, there's something here. It's really cool that we've been in it for so long that we finally get to see people make that transition to like, oh, these guys weren't just bullshitting us for a year and a half. You know what I mean? So hit him with the VIP Veteran Broadhead shout out.
This week's VIP Veteran Broadhead shout out is Carl Williams. Carl actually just won our VIP giveaway for the month of June. That's a set of arrow wraps, a pack of broadheads, and a set of VIP practice tips.
Those wraps are sick.
Dude, those wraps are sexy.
I know. Matt says he's going to send some to us.
I know.
We need to make sure. Yeah, I know you're listening, Matt. You need my address again, man. I'll send it to you.
I would say it's only the 75th time we gave it to you.
Yeah.
It's all right. Carl was in the U.S. Army for 7.5 years. He is now medically retired, and he did a 15-month tour in Iraq in Baghdad. So, Carl, we appreciate that. We appreciate you sacrificing your time away from your family and making sure that we can do this podcast here for us. So,
yeah, we appreciate it, Carl. All your sacrifice. I mean, 7.5 years. It's a long time. 15 months tour in Iraq. I mean,
and he made sure to tell me he's going to put the Veteran Broadhead to good use.
Heck yes, man. You cannot beat that thing. National Anthem's going to play, just to warn you. Let's get into the other partners. Ingram's. Whoa, do you see the mic twist right there?
Drifted
that
on
thing
you.
is drifting.
Whoa,
I got to tighten the set screw.
Need an
on
iPhone,
this.
bro?
Yeah. Savage. Let's get into Ingram's Outdoor Obsession. All your taxidermist needs. Big news coming out of Ingram's coming soon. He won't. It'd be close. I'm
It'd be
excited.
real
He's going to be at
close.
the launch party. I'm excited.
He is?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
excited
that's
to talk to him. We haven't been able to see him for a while.
I was like, we're recording this the night of the launch party, so we're not giving any details of the launch party just because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So, let's see. We got
ECW
calls. All your custom calls needs. Huge news coming out of ECW calls too. I mean, it's incredible what we've been able to do in the short time of just partnering with people. When people say giving back to your partners, like, bro, I mean, it's hard to top the line that we've just created and their hard work has created.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it makes me feel good and really appreciate everybody listening, and you guys really believing into what we're saying every week about the people who support us, and you guys showing support for them through us, and referencing our names or dropping our names, or in a email or a direct message. We really appreciate that, and it's something that we take pride in, is giving back and being able to get their products out there.
There's one thing we don't really say. That is a 100% American made by a veteran company.
Absolutely.
That's something that we don't note a lot. We love working with them. Like we say a lot, we are not veterans, but we have the utmost respect for anybody that's served, because they are the reason we get to produce this podcast and get to say shit on it without getting regulated. All right, Sitlock, all your carbon and ozone needs.
They just opened up ozbysitlock.com, so for all your ozone needs, be sure to hit that up. It is a new site, and you get free shipping on every order over $99.
Nice. All right, that's it, right?
That is
Let's
it.
get into the show. All right, guys, we got Tim Cates on. Nailed the last name, right?
Yep.
Oh, man, I'm getting good at the last names. Most of the time I murder him, and then homie makes fun of me for 6 days. You are from southern Wisconsin. You're just dropping giants, and you reached out to us. I'm glad you did. You are the guy that we want to come on this podcast, the unknown guy that's just out there smashing them, know? So we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, kind of your location and how you got started into hunting.
Sure. All right, well, I'm 32 years old. I hunt southeastern Wisconsin. I grew up bull hunting. I've been doing it for 20 years now. Far back as I can remember, I remember probably 4 or 5 years old. My dad was dragging me out bull hunting, and I remember that's some of my earliest childhood memories is sitting in the crotch of a tree above or below him when he was bow hunting. So I've been around it my whole life. So it's, been in my blood forever.
It's crazy how. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're
it's
good.
crazy how, like, back in the day, you just sitting in the crotch of a tree, and now if someone did that, they'd be like, no, man, that's not going to work.
Yeah, I know. I think about taking my kids when I take the boys out, and I'm like, man, how did they just throw me in the crotch of a tree and I just sat there for 3-4 hours at a time?
It's a different
amazing
world.
to think about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that was before safety harnesses and all that kind of stuff were really around, But yeah, so, and I'm a plumber. That's what I do for work. So I get, quite a bit of time off. Married, I have 5 kids. So pretty much efficiency has become the older I get. The more I try to get more efficient,
You're like me, you're knocking them out early. That's what I like to do too. Knock the kids out early.
Yeah, I should be. Hopefully, I'm done with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping too.
Should be done.
Yeah.
So you gotta tag out eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not very often that we have someone come on and I'm like, well, what legend do you want to talk about? Because you got a few Legend of the Woods. I'm like, you can just pick one, man, because I'm interested in all of them. So
yeah, and I'll talk about deer I called Inferno. He's not. I mean, he's a huge deer, and not the highest. I had a higher scoring deer I've killed before, but like as far as story wise goes, that deer's the best story I have. I had more history with him than any other deer. Basically so if we go back to 2014, was the first year. I mean, at that point, he was 2.5, I believe. He really wasn't on my radar. He was just a basic 10-pointer with like common And he had like a common base G2 that year. But he always had that kind of high arcing rack, like kind of, when I killed him, he is up high, tall.
Yeah, kind of kick back instead of
Yeah,
straight
he
out.
always had real short manes. He always just looked a lot different than the other deer. And plus, he always had, the way I kept them apart going that far back is he had a white patch that kind of wrapped around the inside of his leg and always came back. Because if it wasn't for that, like if you were to see the pictures from like 2015 2016, you'd be like, no way that's the same deer. But so in 2014 he was nothing huge. He's 2.5, just a 10-pointer. Like I said, neighbors had pictures of him. I mean, I had tons of encounters with him in 2015 or 14. Had him, I got some pretty cool video of him just raking up a tree on like November 10th or 11th, I believe it was. And he I just really wasn't on my radar. It's just a deer that was around. I remember telling my buddy actually one time that, I was like, well, he was hunting about a mile away from me, and he kept on getting the same deer on camera. And I was like, man, let that deer walk if you can. He's got some good potential, just for how young he was in mainframe 10. Just joking with him, I wasn't expecting him not to kill him if I didn't see him. But so anyway, so 2014 rolls around, end up picking up one of his sheds. Not much really thinking of him at that point. So pick up one of his sheds. He was a daylight deer for sure. Like he was in daylight all the time. Even back then, like I had more pictures in that deer daylight than probably any other deer I've ever had. And so I said I picked up one of his sheds 2014. So 2015 rolls around, same type of thing. He's just a real high frame 10-pointer, short brows, and at this point he's probably 140. But that year I had him in velvet, and then he completely MIA. Like I don't know where he went. And I'm pretty good with knowing everyone around me that hunts and everything else, and no one else was getting them, and I'm at a loss of where that deer went in 2015. But I don't know. I've had that before where I feel like 3.5-year-olds are just kind of venture out and they're gone, and if they live and survive that year of being dumb at 3.5, they seem to come back. I don't know what it is, but I've had that happen on a few deer for some reason. But yeah, so 2015 really wasn't much history with them. Then 2016 comes around, and a picture I've sent you guys, he shows up in velvet and just looks like so I got the name Inferno. It just looks like Fireball on top of his head. He's got points everywhere, and then of course in velvet they look way way bigger than they
looks
really
like
are.
He's just carrying around a spade shovel with a bunch of points on it.
Yeah, and it's everything's bladed and there's points everywhere. So first off he shows up in velvet. And so at that point, I'm like, all right, well, let's start kind of doing some, try to figure out what this deer is doing. And the property that I was hunting him on is a real small. It's considered I think it's 38 when you look at the plot map, but it's got 3 rental houses and a pole barn. So there's probably 15 acres that are huntable. And this deer is in there all summer. Like I'm getting pictures every 2 or 3 days of this deer. And then so September comes rolling around. He's still showing up on cameras. Our bow season open. I don't know when it opened that year. Around the 15th, usually September every year. And so he shows up. He's still showing up. So I started hunting him pretty hard in September. And I'm hunting him basically only on cold fronts. Like I started figuring out that at that point I had already realized what deer he was from 2014. And I had him in this hayfield all the time in daylight. Just a big daylight mover. Of course, it's 2 years later, so he's a little bit smarter, but he's still like I'm getting pictures in October of this deer about every 5 or 6 days moving in daylight. But I mean, he was only moving a short distance from his bedding area, and I had my cameras pretty much right on top of him, and I pretty much knew it because when he's in that property, he's got like 5. He's got a little bedding area that's literally 5 acres, and that's about it. Like this isn't a property. It's right next to a subdivision. It borders a subdivision, and then it borders fields on one side. So there's really nowhere else for him to go when he's in there. And he's kind of got set up that when he's bedding, he's winding the whole subdivision, and he's winding where I would have to come from. So he's kind of all the deer do the same thing on that property. So it's pretty kind of tough to hunt in a way. But
yeah, I can imagine, man, being 15 acres. We hunted 21. And it's just hard to access with the wind, and everything.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. And the way it lays out, all the woods that they bed in is in the east, and to the west is just grass, like grassy area that rolls down into a subdivision. So, I use the subdivision to my advantage. I try to stay closer to that when I sneak up into my stands. But yeah, so I mean, that year pretty much had him. I don't understand, in October how I didn't get on him. It was just we were playing cat and mouse. I'd sit one stand, go the other way, whether he was winding me coming in or who knows what, or just kind of playing cat and mouse all of October. It gets to about, let's see, October 22nd, I believe the date was, or 23rd. And I'm walking out of the stand, and this deer, he busts me. Like, it's dark, in the afternoon. I'm walking back to my truck, and I'm walking this main trail, and I look over to my left, and he's standing there. And it's like he's skylining kind of on a hill, and I'm just like, all of a sudden you're just like, oh. So your instant reaction is hit the deck. At this point, it's like 40 yards maybe from me. So I drop to the ground, I'm down for about 5 seconds, and I'm going, what am I doing? Whenever I bust a deer, especially on a property like that, I've learned that you get up and just make noise and act like you're just someone walking, going from mowing the grass to, cooking on the grill. They don't seem to react as badly as if they were to if you were hunting them, so it's try not to act like predator at that point. So I stood right back up. I actually pulled out my phone, put the home screen on, and faked like I had a phone call and I was talking on the phone. Well, I'm like 40 yards from this buck, and he's just staring me down, and I'm just like watching him out of the corner of my eye, and I kind of have to pass him to get out of there. So I'm like, he's like quarter into my left, and so I'm just watching out of the corner of my eye. I'm just watching him, and I'm just talking, like clear as day. He knows I'm there. I'm talking. Walk right by the thing, walk right out of there. As I'm getting out of there, I look back, and he's just standing there still looking at me. And I'm like, well, hopefully that worked out. And, and then, of course, I did end up having pictures of him pretty much every couple days after that. So I must not have buggered him up too bad there. But, yeah, so, that was middle of October 20s, So I hunted him really only, I was hunting him hard up to that point. Then October 24th rolled around, and I knew on one of my other farms I had a giant deer that I ended up killing that year, 2016. He showed up like on the day between October 22nd and 26th for like the last 3 years. So I kind of had in the back of my mind, I knew that deer was like a mega pushing 200. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, that deer's still alive. He should be showing up. So I kind of switched gears, started hunting this other deer. And I could go on 2016 for hours. That year is almost embarrassing how many big deer I had around me that year. And that's something I'll never have again. But, so I basically switched gears. I started hunting another deer. And I ended up killing him in winter. But I was hunting 2 deer that were bigger than him. So I kind of just put him on the back burner, different property, really hoping that no one else would get on him. Because as far as I heard, I hadn't heard any talk and anyone saying anything about him. So and I don't really have too many hunters right next to that property. If they are, they're hunting small lake lots, so I don't really hear much. So, yeah, so anyway, so we get past that. I start hunting this other deer, November, December. Muzzleloader comes along, and I had my gun tag. And I was like, well, I'm going to go out there and check cameras. Go out there and check my cameras. I run mostly cell cameras on every property, so I very rarely check cameras to begin with. Like, I pretty much have 2 cell cameras on every property, and then a couple of regular cameras. So I really don't check them very often. But so I'm walking out. We had fresh snow. It's a really cool picture. Remind me, and I'll send it to you guys. But I walk by, cut some fresh tracks going into the bedding area. And I look at them, and I'm like, man, these are some huge tracks. I bet this is this guy. When I see the tracks, I'm already downwind of him, or upwind of him. So he's already smelling me at this point. And I'm like, well, let me just get to the back corner. Maybe he won't think anything of it. Anyway, so I get to the back corner. Gets about dark. Didn't see anything that night. Come back. Start making my way back, and I can see that something took off running the same way it went into that bedding area at some point. I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I, was running right towards one of my cameras. So I go down, pull the card, and I have him in real cool pictures. One of those heavy snows where, snow stuck to the trees, everything else. So real cool picture of him just daylight running by that. Cool picture. Sucks he busted me again. But So that goes on, and basically from that point, I didn't hunt them again the rest of the year. And actually, so then get into shed season. And so I'm driving around trying to find this deer. And finally, one day I'm kind of, we live by a big lake, and there's a lot of lake houses. So when I drive around my wife's car all the time, so people don't know who I am when I'm watching deer.
That's a great idea.
I take the Suburban out, and I usually have all the kids, and they got the video playing in the back, so it doesn't look like I'm being nosy. I'm not driving around in my pickup truck or nothing looking for deer. But I'm down by a lake one night, and there's always some fields by a lake that are full of deer in the winter where everything groups up. And I'm watching these deer, and this neighbor, I see he's outside with a spotting scope, and I'm like, well, go talk to this guy, see what he's watching. And all of a sudden he pulls out a picture on his phone and he goes, look at this deer that was out here the other night. And I'm like, wait a second. That's like, I know that deer. Like, when was this? He goes, oh, this was last night. So I'm like, really? So I get back in my car and I'm sitting there and I watch him, and that deer Inferno ends up coming out that night. Well, this point right here, I'm 2.2 miles from where I was hunting this deer all fall. And it's winter time. They move like that all the time, but he, so that's kind of how I figured out where he was wintering and shifting to. So from that point on, pretty much that winter, I bet I watched him 10 times from the car. And it was always like, I'd watch him there for 2 days, and all of a sudden he'd show up on my cell camera on my property. And I'm like, well, there's no point looking tonight. And then he'd shift back over. So it was 2 days, but it'd be like probably a week switch. 1 week he'd be over here, the next week he'd be over there. And he was doing this in all of January. Comes up to February, and I'm like, man, this deer's going to be dropping. And so I'm really starting to watch him. He basically, Valentine's Day, I get a call from the neighbor on the subdivision right next to where I hunt. Like, his back garden butts up to, the spot that I hunt in the subdivision. And I've known him my whole life. I actually grew up in that subdivision, so I'm good friends with everyone. And he calls me up and goes, hey, you want to come over, take a look at some sheds? So I was like, talk to my wife. I'm like, it's Valentine's night. Can we go look at some deer stuff? Got the blessing, and I was like, all right, let's go over there. And, all this time in 2016, I'm seeing all these pictures of him. He looks huge, but in the back of my mind, I'm always going, man, I really don't think he's as big as what I'm giving him credit. I mean, he's got a ton of points that year, 23. And I'm like, man, if I see these sheds, and I might be a little disappointed that, it's not as big as I thought. I get over there, and he shows them to me. They were laying right next to the garden, so my property and his garden comes out into the property I hunt. They're all nice neighbors. So like the sheds were laying on the trail, like going up to his garden, and his wife found them. And so I get up there and I look at the sheds, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, these things are huge. And I started looking at him like, man, this deer is what I thought he was, plus bigger with the mass, And so basically I got, started scoring on those sheds, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I figured he was like about 186 that year with a spread. He had 23 points, so I'm like, all right, well, let's get a game plan going into 2017, because that's the deer I'm going to be going after with all intentions. I thought for sure that deer was going to break, go 200. Like I already knew that deer was 4.5, and he was that big. And I'm like, man, he's hitting 5.5. That deer I thought for sure was going to go 200, but so anyway, 2016, one more thing about that. I keep rambling on about 2016, but he, when we found, so November 14th, he showed up one day and on camera, and his left eye was about gouged out. And I'm like, oh, this ain't good. And then when we picked up, when I got to his sheds, when I got to see the sheds, it had a whole bunch of pus underneath the antler, like when the antler popped off, there's pus under there. So I was a little worried that he had some kind of infection going on. So
you said you got that picture in December?
What's that?
When was the first picture you noticed his eye?
November 14th.
Okay.
Yeah. So I noticed that November 14th. So I was a little worried all winter. And all winter you'd see him and his eye was shut. Like in every picture, his eye was shut. And 2016, like I had so many daily pictures of that deer. It's like almost unbelievable. So then 2017 rolls around. My neighbor's got the same neighbor I found the sheds. He doesn't hunt or anything. He's just kind of wildlife guy. Doesn't have a problem with me hunting anything like that.
Those are nice friends to have.
Yeah, right.
yeah, like I said, I grew up in the neighborhood, so it's a small neighborhood. There's probably 10 houses in that little area, so everyone knows everyone. I grew up right there, but he he ran cameras actually in. Well, I should take a step back here, but I was able to. He was nice enough to give me those sheds off that deer. Just his wife was more or less like almost astounded that I knew so much about this deer and was so into it. And she's like, "Well, they don't mean much to me," so So I ended up getting the sheds.
Day gift.
That's super cool.
Well, I didn't get them right away. I shouldn't say that. I had to plant a seed in there that, hey, I go, hey, if you ever want to sell those, I'd be interested, especially if I were to, kill that deer next year. And then, he called me up about a month later. He says, they mean way more to you than us, so why don't you come get them? So I ended up luckily enough to get on those sheds. So 2017 rolls around. He's got cameras out in early June, and I don't put any of my cameras out till like mid-July. He sends me a picture, I believe it's June 20th, and it's a picture of him, and he's got, he's big, but he's missing a lot of the points that he had the year before. Like he had a 16-inch, I don't know what you call it, almost like a double main beam, or kind of like a G2. It's not really on like a G2, but he had a 16-inch tine last year on his left side. No, his right side. I'm looking at him right now. But in that antler, and now in 2017, I was like, man, that's going to grow into double main, be huge, And I'm looking at it, and he sends me a picture in July or June, and I'm like, nope, not there. Like his right side is missing all the points that I had last year. And I'm like, well, I wonder if this got something to do with the eye, So and that's the only picture, and he's growing at that point. He's pretty small still for being that late in the year. I figured he'd be a lot bigger, but anyway, so I don't see this deer on my cameras till it was that daylight picture I sent you where he's walking up and he's in velvet. And right there, I get that picture, and it's just like, holy cow, finally showed back up. Now I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, that deer's big. I mean, he's huge, but he definitely isn't going to be 200 like I had been thinking all, since last fall. I was like, man, I'm finally going to get a chance at 200, And I was all jacked up about it. Not that inches are everything, but, it's kind of something, he's a huge deer and something you always kind of number you kind of look at. And he shows up and he's huge. And I'm like, well, I'm going after him regardless. But he definitely didn't put on the antlers. And I figured it was from that eye infection or whatever. He didn't put on the points that he did last year.
Yeah, so, very well could be. He was holding nutrition back, trying to heal a wound and not putting it towards the antler.
Yep, that's I mean, granted, he's still a huge deer, but he put on the mask. Like, I have a picture of me holding, I forget what it's like. I don't think I'm holding a soda can, and his base is on that one side are about. I don't remember measurements off the top of my head, but he's way bigger than a soda can for bases.
In 16, his H2 and H3 are probably like 9 inches.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like in velvet. It's just ridiculous.
They're huge. Yeah. So basically, 2017 comes around. I get those velvet pictures of him. He's not as regular as he was before. And now I'm going back. I'm searching all over trying to find where the heck this deer went. And I pick him out of a hayfield one day, at that property, same property he'd wintered at. And I'm like, oh, maybe he's just living kind of down by this hayfield, which is basically 2 miles from our hunt, but no big deal. Kind of shifts around during the rut. He's always done that type of deal. So I was like, well, I'm going to keep hunting them. At this point, I kind of set a stand up on kind of a dangerous setup on him. I kind of set up so I could sneak in and hunt him right on the edge of his bedding area. If I had a northwest wind, which is kind of common, but I could get in there close with the northwest wind, so set that stand up. I kind of hunted that stand because it was kind of a safe stand. I could get to it fairly easy. I'm pretty close to where I parked my truck. It's not a very big property anyway. So I'm hunting them. October 28th rolls around. I'm sitting there standing. I watch him walk out about 75 yards. He goes out, makes a scrape underneath a tree, rubbing up a bunch of branches, give him a couple of grunts, which I very rarely do. I hate calling the deer. Like this past year I hunted Iowa, and every deer I called that seemed to come to me. Well, around here I make a call and it's just like going the other way. I watch all the hunting shows, and they're always calling at them. I'm like, man, I do that where I'm from. They hear our neighbors, walking out to the tree stand. You hear every single neighbor rattling horns and grunting, you know. So so I really avoid calling as much as I can around here. So I gave him a few grunts, and he could care less. He kind of just raked up a few trees, mosey on out of my way. But at that point, then I laid eyes on him that year in 2017, and I'm like, man, this deer's got some major mass, and he's huge looking. So I'm like, all right, well, you know, I'm definitely going after him. I got nothing else, no other deer I'm even interested in 2017. So basically, I hunt him pretty much every day from that point on. November 1st, it's raining. I go to a stand that I don't like sitting in because I have to walk right by the bedding area, and I'm winding it the whole time. But on November 1st, it was raining, and I'm like, well, maybe I can get away with it. And pretty heavy rain. So I snuck back and sat at a back stand. I was in the stand for maybe 10 minutes. And all of a sudden I look up. There's a doe bounding through the grass coming straight at me. And I'm like, oh, something's going on here. Look behind her, and he's just bouncing through the grass coming right my way. And holy cow. So grab the bow, get ready. Doe comes right underneath me. Like, you couldn't plan any better. He comes right underneath me, goes in between my, as in a ladder stand, goes in between my stand and the tree. And at this point, I'm almost starting to panic. I'm going, hey, I'm grunting at him, you know, with my mouth, going, meh, 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 trying to get him to stop. And then that switched to yelling at him. And I'm going, hey, hey, hey. You know, that's, you know, I can't get him to stop. Finally, about 30, I think it was about 38 yards. All of a sudden, I get him to stop, quartering away real hard. You know, at that point, everything's at a blur, and I'm sitting there going, 20, 30, 40, 20, you know, in your head. And I'm like, where's he at? Where's he at? And I let one go, and it ended up being a perfect shot. Watched him run about 40 yards into a field, flips over on his back, and I'm like, more or less, I was like, what just happened? Like, it's just so quick. Like, I hunted that deer for so many years. You kind of almost expect more of a, I don't know how to explain it. You're almost like, oh, it just ended that quick. Like, it's done and over. I've known you for how many years? And
yeah, you're thinking, I'm going to see him coming in.
He's gonna be coming in slow-mo like on
raking
TV.
some trees.
No, that's exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't expect them just a full bore run, and you got to yell at them and shoot them. So it's just a little bit different. I was just like, huh. I always kind of had that feeling anytime you kill a big deer, it's almost sad in a way. It's like, man, I've chased you, known you for years, and watched you from the car how many nights, and then now I got to find something new to go follow, you know. But yeah, so that's basically, you know, a story on how I came to kill him and kind of his history of him. But
we wrote down a bunch of stuff here. You went through a lot of stuff.
I feel like I just rambled on.
No, it was great, man.
Can you hear me? I can't hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. I can hear you.
Can you hear homie all right?
Yeah, he's a little quiet, but I can hear him.
All right.
Turn your gain up, bro.
I know. I don't know what's going on.
There you are.
Hey,
I got you
go.
good. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we jotted down a bunch of stuff here, man. I love it when the guest just comes on and tells their story like that and just flows. I'm like, I hear something, I'm like, oh man, I want to talk about that. But I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt him. I'm just going to let him flow, because if I interrupt him, he's going to lose his train of thought. So we're going to jot back to some of the notes here and kind of break down this story a little more. Homie, hit it. Sure. You jotted down something.
Yeah. You know, I find it interesting how deer just, you know, kind of disappear for a whole year. And, you know, like juries is one people that really, you know, highlight it. And, you know, the deer leaves for a year and then comes back, and then they name it a totally different name than what it was 2 years ago. And then they end up killing the deer. And then when they kill the deer, then they realize, you know, 5 years ago, it was this deer with this sheds. And, you know, I just think that stuff is cool, how a deer can just totally disappear, and then you have, you know, good communication with, you know, the few people that are hunting by you, and you know, they don't have anything, and, you know, you're just at a complete loss about where this deer was for basically a whole year. Yeah,
it's nuts. And like I've had it before. Now on that same, you know, these deer travel, like, you know, like everyone when I was younger, everyone was like, oh man, that deer, if you have 200 acres, that deer ain't leaving, you know. And the older and older they get, I'm watching these deer, and man, they're moving, you know. And I'm talking to people. So there's a deer in that same property. I was not really hunting, but I was kind of watching. Like, he had potential to be a giant, and I had pictured him in 2016, you know, a couple of years in a row, and all of a sudden he disappeared. Well, then next, I forget what year it was now, probably 2017 or whatever. The guy finds this deer dead, and he finds it dead as a crow flies 6.5 miles from where I was kind of hunting them. It's just nuts how far these deer are moving. And it's kind of the same stories with the deer I called Switchblade that I killed in 2016. That deer with summer, it was the people who had pictures of him in the summer were 3.5 miles from where he would show up every October and live on me all of rut, and then go right back to them for the winter and summer. But all of rut for 3 straight years, that deer would travel all the way back over to me. And it's crazy how to do that. And another example is just like I had a deer that the one I called the Ghost, the 200, 220, 230 type deer. That deer, I was hunting that deer 2012 on a property 5 miles away. He disappears from me for 2012. So he disappears for 3 years. I get permission on a new farm, like 5-6 miles away, and my second camera pole, he's there, and I'm like, what? Like where? What? Like where have you been? Like how did you just shift that far of a home range?
I was wondering if like they're chasing a doe and then they get there, they breed for a while, and then they realize like, hey, this is pretty primal.
Hey, this ain't bad.
This ain't bad. It's like when you start hanging out with a chick and you're like, this ain't bad. I'll just kind of chill here,
Yep.
So,
I found me some turnips.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good spot.
Yeah. No, that's crazy how far they just seem to shift. And like I said, I'm sure it's like that everywhere. Where I hunt, it's not real. I don't know exactly where you guys are down there, but like it's not real like creek and draw type of areas. It's little square chunk woodlots. Like, we got a lot of farmland. It's really flat country. Like I joked, like when I hunted Iowa this past fall, I saw more hills out there than I've seen in my whole life. Like when I go hunting, like I'm lucky if I walk up, change an elevation 50 feet in a whole year. So, it's just little blocks surrounded by big cropland, and subdivisions and lakes. But yeah.
Nice. One thing you mentioned that I'm going to try this year is when you got busted walking back to the truck.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've told the listeners or not that I'm going to be on a suburban area. But anyways, I'm going to be hunting a suburban area this year, and I am going to try that. If I get busted walking to the stand or walking out, I'm just going to continue walking instead of like stop like I would on my own property and chill. I'm just going to continue walking like I'm just some hiker or something and see if that works.
I agree with that 100% because so I live next to a park. It's like a park, like a dog park. It's like a 160-acre park, and they just walk dogs out here. And I'll see it all the time at my house. I'll walk out back, and you'll come across a deer. And if you were to try to just be quiet and kind of just walk the trail, and act like you're hunting them or trying to sneak up on them, like game over. But you sit there. Matter of fact, me and my wife did it a couple of weeks ago. I'm sitting there, I'm like, here, watch this buck up here. I said, I think let's just have a full-blown loud conversation. Walk by him at 35 yards, and he just watches us walk by. No care in the world. Now, I would never do that on my farm properties, but it seems, I don't know, like subdivision deer I think they can tell, whether you're in predator mode or you're just an average Joe just walking around,
Yeah, I could see that. They just get accustomed to whatever they're used to. So
They just know when deer season is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it boils down to.
Yep.
So you didn't have any encounters with this deer in early October. Do you know where he was during that time?
In early October, I was getting him on cameras every year, but he was pretty well. I mean, in 2016, that deer, October lull. I mean, that deer, no such thing. He moved daylight every single cold front, every single high pressure day. Like I always watch the pressure, and kind of there was a year or two there where I went through a stretch where I'm like, hey, this deer's only moving when it's 30.2 in daylight, and bear metric pressure, but it pretty much always coincides with a cold front. So
right,
like anytime there's a cold front, pressure goes up. So it's kind of all in the same. So I was watching him do that, and he did that. He was a very good mover in daylight early in October, but I was, like I said, 2016, he was all over, and I don't know how I didn't get on him that year, but
Mine was
2017.
What was it? Well, the other one was 190 something, right?
Yeah, he ended up going 195.
Yeah, so you're focused on a 195. It's hard to focus on a 190 and a 180 at the same time.
Yeah,
Can't decide.
And like a 230 that year. That's what I mean. 2016 was a ridiculous year. I'll never have a year like that before again. And there, you know.
That's depressing.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
do you think this deer was daylight on the cam so much because you had it close to where he was bedding, or was he just traveling up in the area, checking everything, making sure nobody's trying to come in on his territory?
No, I think that I was getting him in daylight so much just because, like I said, when he's on that property, he beds in a very small spot. And see, all these properties now, I've hunted like my entire life, you know, and a lot of them, they change, but the deer change, but I mean, they all kind of do the same thing. Like these deer, like I've been putting my cameras in the same spot since I was going to Walmart to do film, you know, back in like the late 90s. So, you know, I've always pretty much had my cameras in the same spots. And I've always, you know, at that property, I've always had this camera in the same spot. And there's always, every single year, that's where the biggest deer walk. Now it is probably only, probably 50 yards from where they are bedding. So, I mean, it is tight to their bedding. But, I mean, he was walking out in this grassy opening, which if people in Studlers were paying attention, they could be watching him quite a bit, you know. But
So, are you running all mobile cams on when they're that close, or?
well, basically, I'll run 2 cell cams on pretty much every property, and then I'll run. It depends on the size of property. I live and die by cameras. I'm not gonna lie. If I don't have a picture of a deer on a cell camera on a property and I'm hunting that deer for like a week, I won't have a picture of him for a week. Like I ain't going out there. I probably rely on him a little too much.
Yeah,
but,
we asked that question on Twitter if it would have changed your game up, and it made me and homie honestly think we depend on them a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We base our hunts around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are actually shifting to that way too. One, to keep the pressure off, and two, to let you know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. What cell cams are you running?
I run a little bit of everything. I got a few snipers. I'm running, what I have, probably 7 or 8 snipers. I think I got sitting there. I got probably 7 or 8 Spartans, and I got a couple Bushnells, and then probably 25, 30 regular cameras.
Nice.
But
we're in the cell cam market. I think we got it narrowed down to I run Moultrie Mobile. I know that system.
Yep.
I like it a lot, but I'm always interested to see how other cams do, and
sure.
Cell cams, man, if you can get them, game changer for sure. If you got them in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean that's scouting big time right there. You know, it's like, it's like I said, I live and die by them. That's for sure. And it's, partially, when I was younger, you'd have cameras and you'd be checking them. You're checking cameras every 2 weeks or a week. Now I'm like, man, I must be probably getting older too. Now I'm like, man, I'm too lazy to go out and check cameras. So let's just see if anything pops up on cell cams.
So let's get to the big thing that I jotted down here on the notes is this buck was traveling about 2.2 miles in the winter, late winter. I mean, when did your guys' season close up there?
We close January 1st, I believe.
Oh, wow, that's kind of early.
So,
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you're out of season, still putting in the scouting work, and you're finding out that this buck's traveling 2.2 miles. Do you know the reason he's traveling that far is?
And honestly, I don't know. Like, there's food. That's kind of always been his mentality. He's always, okay, so from where I hunt, I have properties that I hunt to, get my direction straight here. I have properties I hunt to the east, only a mile away from that property. And then I only live 3 miles to the west of the property I killed him on. So he was shifting almost all the way over to my house. Now that deer never showed up on my east property. Like never once and crossed the road and went that way on cameras that I know of,
Mm-hmm.
But, all these deer in this area tend to go to the lake. I don't know if there's eating out of bird feeders at that point, but everything kind of tends to group up and come down towards the lake in the winter. I'm not sure why he was coming back and forth so much that year, but obviously, him and it was actually a bachelor group of bucks. I got the sheds off of another real good 10-pointer the same year when he dropped on that property. A 10-pointer dropped on that property, and so a group of bucks are kind of just traveling back and forth. And I'm trying to remember, 2016 I think was a fairly easy winter for us. So there wasn't a ton of
Yep.
snow.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this past winter. I mean, pretty sure it was pretty mild. So I had food all over the place, but everything tends to want to go to the lake. So
That's crazy that you said that. I was looking at the harvest reports for I'm going to be hunting, and most of the bucks were harvested by the lake, like where there's no ag fields, which just blows my mind. Like I'm like, oh man, it doesn't even make sense to me. But
yeah. Oh yeah, they travel that way, and every deer is a little different because it's like, so in 2015 I killed a real big deer that I called turkey foot, like mid 170s deer, and I killed him on that property 1 mile to the east of where I killed this one, and that deer was shifting back and forth between my two properties almost daily, especially during a rut. All of a sudden I'm at one spot, and he's popping up on my cell cam a mile away on my other property. I'm like, what the heck? I was just playing cat and mouse with him, and he's jumping properties east and west. Whereas now that Inferno deer, he never went to the east. He only would go west from that property. So it's just kind of crazy how they all my properties are fairly close to each other. And a lot of times certain deer will go a certain way and different bucks will go another way,
It's super cool how you have properties where you could tie deer together.
Yeah.
That's something we don't have the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
We potentially maybe had one buck on cam like 2 miles away.
No, yeah. I did look at that. It was, I'm gonna have to do it again. It was like 10:30 at night. I was laying in bed and I did it up, but I'll look at it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, man. There's not a lot of deer that have this characteristics running around this area, but then the neighbor found a shed and half of his main beam was broke off. So he summer there and then travel back in winter, just like this buck was doing.
Was that the one across the road?
Yeah, the one that he broke out.
That broke?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So back to the 2.2 miles of this deer traveling in winter. That's a long way to like see him one spot and then get him on cam to hope that he drops sheds. on one end or the other,
Well, that was my thought too. Is I was watching them and I was like, I had a lot of pictures of him early February. So there's like 1 week, like in early February, he was like on my property every day. Then I picked him back up, like I think like February 8th or 9th on the other property mile. I can't watch my hunting property from the road. There's really nothing to watch there. So I'm watching the other property by the lake. I pick him up like February 10th, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have no shot at these sheds, and then all of a sudden I'm picking him back up, and he's just over on my other property. And then, like I said, I knew the 13th I had him on cell camera that night, and I'm like, man, come on, any day now, just drop him there. Don't make me go knock, because I could get permission in the one field that he was wintering in to go look for sheds, but I don't kind of avoid it. I don't feel like another guy hunts it, but I don't want to. He's just a gun hunter type of deal, but I don't want to piss people off.
Yeah. Is where you're hunting, is there a lot of, so you said it's just blocks of timber. Do you think that's why they're traveling so far, is because they're traveling a long way from timber to timber?
Yeah, it probably is, and they don't have, when they are traveling in between, very rarely is there little creeks that run between them. There's not big draws. There's nothing. I mean, they're traveling these blocks of timber and they're just shifting through fields basically. So sure, that's part of the reason that, they get feeling too much pressure in one from hunters or whatever. I'm sure they just kind of get, you wouldn't want to sitting around a little piece of property where you got pressure, people pushing you around all the time. I'm sure they kind of just shift off,
Yeah.
But
I could see that, maybe one property has a little better thermal cover. One property we hunt, it's the timber is just so open when late season comes.
Oh,
it's pretty much impossible.
Ghost town.
Yeah, it's pretty much impossible to kill deer, does. But I mean, the bucks, a few does, but like during the rut, it's gangster.
I would say early season it's good because the oaks are there.
Yeah, early season it's good. Yeah. They got a nice breeze flowing through the open timber. The rut, they're looking for some cover. We got that on the north end, but nothing that's good thermal cover. So when late season hits, you might as well just hang it up. You know what I mean? So
if it's bad like this year, for sure.
Yeah.
This heavy snow this year just kicked our butt. We literally had bucks that we were potentially going to kill late season on camera. And then we got that one heavy snow and it flattened all our CRP and then just ghost town places.
Yep.
I mean, just absolutely ghost town.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got a property the same type of way. It's kind of open oak woods, and it's surrounded by, there's a little creek draw that comes through there. It's got a little grassy area like, in between the two sections of woods. And that property is where I'm hunting a deer for this year. This coming year, I'm probably going to be after a deer there. But that property early season, like right now, or not right now, but like all summer and all up till about gun season, November 20th, somewhere in that deal, that place is on fire. And all of a sudden, after that, gone. You won't see a deer the rest of the winter, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy how they know where they need to be to survive. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That piece we were talking about, we had a trail cam up, and we got pictures of does at one morning right before the snowstorm, and then 6-foot snow drift on cam. You know what I mean? And then it was just like, nope, nothing's happening. And we're planting 1.5 acres of beans on that property this year, so hopefully that much snow don't come through and just annihilate them. But
yeah, you guys get those beans in yet?
Nope. They're going in soon, but
the lake's drying up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just planted all my bean plots last weekend, so
yeah, man, it's tough. I think we're shooting for the end of the month.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hopefully broadcast them is what my plan is to save some time. It's been planted before multiple times. It just hasn't been planned the last 2 years, so. Hopefully it goes good. Really,
when you guys broadcast them, do you go in and spray them first? Then spray first.
Yeah. Spray them first, till it, broadcast it, cultivac it. Yeah. So do it right and try to get them to grow good. And there's a really high density number of deer there, so broadcasting we should get more. Be able to get more beans per acre is what I'm hoping, or at least more forage. Maybe not beans. Because there's probably going to be a lot of, small bean pods being this late in the year, but we're looking more for the forage early season. Because we had a lot of bucks early season on that piece, but they were they weren't coming off the bed,
right?
Because they were too far from the ag. So hopefully with this food plot, we can pull them off a little earlier. Yeah,
no, that's the only good thing about beans too is you plant them. Get them in, and if they do get eaten up like that, and you go and spray Roundup on them, and if they do get eaten up, I always can go in later and broadcast brassicas, in the fall and get them to pop up too, kind of a backup plan.
Yeah,
the beans don't hold out.
That's a good plan. Do you on that 15 acres? Are you able to plant anything, or is it so residential?
Nope, not on that one. No, I don't do anything on that one. That one I just kind of.
You need to get your buddy to extend his garden a half acre.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Be like, you don't need to mow your yard, man. This little piece right here, turnips. I'm telling you.
Yeah. No, that's how it feels there. But yeah, it's I don't do anything on that one. It's just kind of it is what it is for that property. There's not really sometimes you know how it is. You have landowners you feel like you can sit there and say, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? And there's no problem. There's some you're just like, I don't feel like asking.
Yeah. So, sometimes you're just happy to be hunting there. So you're like, I don't want to push it to try to.
Yep. Yeah. It took me when I first started hunting, I think it took me 4 years for him to tell me I could put a tree stand up. So it was another couple of years before he'd let me put cameras up. So
yeah, you don't want to push it then.
No.
You got to play the soft touch game.
Been hunting for a long time now, and it's worked out good. But yeah, it took me a long time to get worked into it. That's for sure. But
so Inferno's rack changed from 2016 to 2017. Are you just kind of chalking that up to his eye being damaged, or did you see a change in the food sources around where he was, living, or kind of go into maybe the reasoning of why his rack shifted so much?
Sure. Now, my original thought was kind of that, when I picked up that shed when I got that shed, it had that pus, the green pus. I think it's actually still on that shed. And it was weird because half of the base of the pedicle of the shed there was covered in green pus, so it was like, something's not good, and I feel like it was partly, but then 2016, we had a ridiculous drought. We didn't get rain at all in that summer. It felt like, which we went opposite this year, but so it could have been that the fact there wasn't much green. Even I think in that picture I have of them, there wasn't much grass low. Like it's all that year was just dry. You could look back at other pictures from that same spot in that same different years, and it's green. He's got green leaves, but there was no green grass really, I don't think, growing around that year. So I know we had a real dry year. So I mean that studies all say that contributes to poor antler growth, and it was real hot that year. But
he was 4 that year, or 3 that year, right? 16.
16 he was 4.
4.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
4 to 5, man. That's normally supposed to be their biggest jump.
Yeah. I mean, he added a ton of mass. Like his bases are huge, but he just lost all his
I'd
points,
say that it was, he was saving nutrients to fight that infection and not putting it towards his rack. And because we have Lopside, who should be a 160s 8-pointer, you know what I mean? But he's not. He's got one side that's a 160s, and the other side, we found his shed, and there's probably 2 inches of skull plate on it, you know what I mean? So he's definitely had an injury that made him that way. So it's crazy how those deer can.
Yeah, it almost looked broke.
Yeah, it looks like the shed broke off, but you could tell it was shed because the backside of it was shed, but he just shed so much of the skull plate. And it was funny, when I picked that shed up, you said, "Oh, it's that deer."
Yeah,
and I was like, "No."
Like,
and then I was looking at pics. I'm like, "Yep, that's it." Homie's right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's when they shed. I've had one like that before too. I've had one where the actual broke his skull plate when he was during rut. And so I don't know where he shed his antler, if the skull plate came out with it or if what. But the next year, same type of deal what you guys are talking about. He had a real good left side, and his right side was just a spike, basically. It's like,
oh wow.
Yeah.
You could. Lopside's on our hit list for sure.
Yeah, his side is like a 2-year-old 8. I mean, it's just like a typical basket rack 8 side.
Yeah.
And then his right side is just
got a 16-inch
G2. It don't even fit on the trail cam pick.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, man. It's super cool, and you have a history with those deer to be able to follow them, put the pieces together, and then it makes you learn. It makes you stop and say, why did that happen? And you start trying to break it down. Was it the weather? Was it an injury? Was it, just we see a huge transition around here from when they plant beans to when they plant corn. It's like deer just naturally change their whole lives around the ag switch. So,
oh yeah, that's big. Especially early season stuff. I have on one property. I have apple trees. Well, these apple trees only are every other year, but every other year these apple trees are loaded. And I'll have like $15 on this property every other year. So luckily this is coming to this year. So it's nice. The odd years are my apple tree years.
Yep.
I've read before.
Same for me. My apple tree in the yard's banging right now. So
yeah. So,
odd years, man. I'm with you.
Yep.
So when you shoot this deer, on the recovery and walking up to him, kind of what are you feeling? Or I know when you opened up, you said that you get the history built with these deer, and then you get it done, and then you end up sad. And I know when Cody shot his deer this year, I kind of felt like I shot the deer, and we're all there having a bro moment, and we're bawling our eyeballs out, and we're high fiving, but we're sad and we're happy.
Yeah,
and, it's all just going on. So kind of go through what was going through your head when you walked up on him.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a mix of emotions for sure. You invest so much time, and especially when you're hunting individual particular deer, you spend so much time thinking about that deer. And my wife says that's the only thing I talked about for a year and a half was Inferno. So, you talk about this deer forever, and and like I said, you watch them all the time. It is a mixed emotion. You kill them, and you're like, well, you're happy as can be. This is what you've been shooting your bow all this time you put into everything you do. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, now what? I kind of, there's no, hey, you want to go, let's go take a ride down the road, see if we can find Inferno on that hayfield or anything like that, So, it's, the respect of it, it's, you feel bad, but you also are excited that everything you do worked out, and, a lot of stuff had to go right for it to lead up to that point. you got to do a lot of things right. It doesn't happen. I mean, it does happen by luck, but it doesn't. You don't get lucky killing big deer all the time. So it's you realize that you put in the work to do it, and it's gonna happen. So that type of deal.
Yeah, it's just like me and homie last year. This time, I don't know how many times I told him, "Oh, Mr. Freeze," or or this. I didn't think I named him at this point, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, Mr. Freeze, he's gonna be here, and he's gonna be here. I got him this year. We're gonna kill him late season, blah 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 blah." And this year we have giants, right? We have some mega giants, but I don't have that 3-year wrap going on where I'm like, "Oh, I got these trail pan pictures. I got them pinned down." I'm really excited for deer season, but I'm not excited as I was last year.
And I mean, my biggest thing is just like, because I love running cams, and it's just like when you shoot them, you're just like, I'm never gonna get in my trail cam again.
That was the first thing that one of the first things we said. We were setting around the deer. I was like, no more pictures of Freeze,
dude. And then that just like that's when it really hit me. Like, that's it, no more velvet, because he was awesome in velvet, just get to see him, to watch him grow, and man, just you're like, he's just not gonna be on cam no more.
Yeah, not gonna be on cam, and people, I start talking to people that hunt but don't they're not into it hardcore like some guys at work, and I start breaking down like how emotionally attached you get to these deer when you start making a connection with them, and they just don't understand, some people, but that's what it is, man. I think you make that connection, and you want to win the whole time. You're like, I'm gonna win, and then you win, and you're like, damn, man, I won.
No,
but
no, it's cool. It's like I said, it's when I shot him, that's kind of how it was almost like all that build up, and it's just like I just had to yell at him to get him to stop, and then I've in my head, and you envision this happening, how many times you figure I'm hitting the scrape, kind of walking in type of deal, like you said, and it's like,
all slow-mo. You walk in, you're like, oh yeah, that's the deer. You draw back, you take that moment, you're like,
I was saying, instead of just all panic, like, he's running right at me. How am I going to stop? Type of deal,
So. I'd have lost my shit when he ran between the tree and the
ladder. The tree and the ladder. I'd have been like, this is
like, what is really going on?
I'm pretty sure I had my thumb had pressure on it at one point when he was like right there, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this right now. And I'm trying to talk myself out of taking a bad shot, and I had him trotting, I think, at one point, and I was just starting to squeeze, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. So I had to keep talking myself out of it, and then we finally stopped, and it was just how when, you range the same tree how many times in the season, 20, 30 times, you're always ranging that tree, and you're like, oh, I know exactly where it is. Once somebody stops and there's so much going on in your head, you're like, I can barely think right now. I have no idea.
That's all I do in the stand. I'm like, all right, Buck's going to stop right there. That's 28 yards.
And then you get all, and then you get all flustered, and you're just
you're like, I don't know what it is. Just going to send
it. I can even, pretty much. I knew. I remember looking through, and I was like, well, 20, 30, 40's on them, so it's going.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you sharing the story of Inferno. Definitely a legendary deer. I'm excited for people to be able to see the pictures of this buck, and that's when the story really comes together. When you get to see the picture, hear him talking about it. Huge shout out to you for reaching out to us and coming on the podcast. Like I said, we created this podcast to let guys like you tell their stories. The guys that have been successful on, I don't know how many giants you got, man. You were sending us pics. I'm like, I just lost count. This guy's got more inches in 3 deer than I've shot.
He's got more screws in his drywall.
I had a really good 3 years there.
So we appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so we've been sitting here for a while talking about deer and drinking Busch Light, and we just changed the settings on the soundboard. So if you're blowing your eardrums right now, I apologize. We want to see how this sounds. We've never ran this setting before. What did you say? It was chorus 1?
Yeah, chorus 1 coming in.
So we're coming in singing hardcore right now. But what do you think about this episode?
I think there's a lot of cool stuff to really sit back and think about. Deer's gone for a year, gets his eyeball gouged out, and then his rack dramatically changes. So.
That was super cool that he brought that into attention. Then we're gonna be able to share that picture of him with the bad eye.
And the giant rack.
Yeah, the amount of points he lost is just insane. He went from a side that had I didn't count 12 or 14 points to an 8-point frame with base kickers.
Right.
I mean, that's just insane to me that he lost so much. But like we said, not being able to put all that into the antler and trying to heal himself could have a huge factor. So I thought this was an awesome story. Another great legend of the woods. Are we gonna leave it up to the listeners?
I was just gonna say, are we gonna say we're closing it out, or what are we doing?
I want to leave it up to the listeners. We've been getting a lot of feedback. We do have more legends on the line, but we can rope in for you guys. Do you guys like the Legend of the Woods series, or do you want us to go back to our regular bullshit episodes? We do have a couple other series coming down the line that we're getting game planned for July, but we do have a few people that want to come on.
Yeah, I think if we do continue it, we'll cap it at 10. And, as we get into deer season, we can just roll them legends into our continuing weekly series.
I think we might. We promised the people that we could get them on, so I think we might need to take a break from the legend, but splice them in every now and then. But we'll let the listeners decide. This is their show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do this for them. Let us know. Social media. You can email us. Any way you want to know. Text message. A lot of you have my number. I mean, all like 7 listeners. So.
One quick note. We did not cover it in the intro. The website is down.
Oh, yeah. Website's down. So, long story. Real short here. So, we wanted to be a cool kid and go to WordPress. So the website is getting transferred over, and then there's going to be the learning curve of learning WordPress compared to what we had, which was Weebly, which we had a good grasp on.
Yeah. Super easy.
We really appreciate over 1,000 visitors a week, close to 1,000 visitors most weeks. I mean, that is insane for us. So we super appreciate you guys coming and reading the content.
It was very painful to switch.
It was, yeah. Something that we didn't want to do, but we knew that we would have so much more availability and making our stuff better, easier to read, flow better with WordPress. So we made the switch. The website will be back up. We're going to learn it, and we're going to putting content back out for you. Luckily, I can write better than I can talk, because that would be terrible. Just like 10% better, though. But
I still got to proofread it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they probably didn't hear any of this because this Chorus 1 setting.
Yeah,
we're not singing.
Yeah, they probably heard nothing. Or they just turned it off because it's so loud they can barely hear it.
But the squiggles look good.
Yeah, the squiggles are big as shit, bro.
That's the only thing looking good right now.
All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We had a blast tonight recording it. Get out there. Get your trail cams out. It's getting that time. Take your kids with you. Leave a legacy. And Whitetail Legacy's out.